This is Beyond with Heather Tesch, where we examine near-death experiences and life itself, hopefully making this life a little better.
Once again, my guest is Karen Newell. Karen, thank you so much for joining me again today.
Well, thank you, Heather. It's always fun to speak with you.
We are starting into a new year. A lot of people like to start some new habits. So we've been talking about meditation. And meditation can be tough to get into, but you have something that makes it easier. And it all starts with these binaural beats. So can you explain that to us and tell us more about Sacred Acoustics?
Yes, well, Sacred Acoustics, that's the company I co-founded with Kevin Cossey. He's a mechanical electrical engineer turned audio engineer. And binaural beats are a significant technology that we embed in all of the recordings that we produce. And binaural beats at their simplest are when you have one frequency played in one ear and a slightly different frequency played in the other ear. And so you would hear like a wah in one ear and a different wah in the other ear. And yet when you hear both at once, your brain interprets that into a wah, wah, wah sound, sort of this wavering sound. And it's very similar to what you hear with tuning forks and crystal bowls and such. And what we learned in our research when we recorded the sounds of crystal bowls and tuning forks, they're emitting binaural beats naturally. So that wah, wah, wah sound, that's a binaural beat. And somehow the brain, the lower brainstem, interprets those two different frequencies into that wavering sound. And what we do with binaural beats is the difference between the two frequencies is related to the brainwave state. Brainwave states that we're in naturally throughout the day, starting with delta, that's the sleep state, 0 to 4 hertz. 4 to 7 hertz, that's the theta state, often associated with deep meditation. And 7 to 12 hertz is the alpha range. That is associated with focus, say when you're reading or writing or very intent on an activity. And the beta state, 12 to 30 hertz, that's the state we're in probably right now. We're walking, we're talking, we're, not paying, focused attention on anything. We're just getting through our day. That's the brain that when you first try to meditate, where the racing thoughts are going on and, you're like, what is this? Why is this even helpful to be focusing on my racing thoughts? But the binaural beats help lower your brainwave state into the alpha, theta, and delta ranges. And so some people listen to binaural beats just to get better sleep. That's where you might listen to delta frequencies. Many of our recordings include right around that 4 hertz area. That's right between delta and theta, the state that we're in between awake and asleep. It's also known as the hypnagogic state. And that might be the state people get in, say, if they're in a hypnotic regression session, or, some people will do that to quit smoking, for example, get into these expanded states and then, sort of retrain your subconscious mind with new beliefs and understandings. And so that's what these kind of recordings help us to do, is to get into that hypnagogic state in a much quicker fashion than traditional meditation. So I know long-term meditators who start listening to these types of recordings, they'll say, oh my gosh, I can go deeper faster than I ever have. This is amazing. And for beginners, very, very helpful, because they really serve as training wheels to help us get into these states a little more easily and then gain confidence in recognizing these states, because sometimes they're very subtle. I know when I first started listening to binaural beats, first of all, I would just fall asleep. It was very hard to hover between that awake and asleep, but just regular practice, it comes over time. You become more accustomed to letting your body profoundly relax, but still maintain that awake, alert awareness in your mind. And so sometimes I know I would be lying there thinking, okay, I'm lying here. This is good. Not having racing thoughts, but I'm just lying here. Am I really in a meditative state? And then I would try to move my finger. It was very hard to move my finger. And that's when I learned, oh, my body is, my body's profoundly relaxed. Another clue is that you might hear yourself snoring. And I'm not a big snorer, but I would lie there and, hear this gentle kind of louder breathing. And I'm be like, oh my gosh, I'm in a very relaxed state. And so from there, that creates the foundation for setting intentions for different things, for asking questions, for just really finding that space within that you can really come to know yourself beyond your reactive emotions and your kind of racing thoughts.
The key is, though, you need the right set of headphones. And I'm curious, can you wear earbuds? Because I know you have to have a 2-speaker system versus a 1-speaker system.
Yeah, it's really important to, because of the left right frequencies, one frequency in each ear, it's very important to deliver them to your brain using headphones. You can use earbuds, but you want to, or AirPods and all the different technology. As long as there's one in each ear, you should be getting a stereo signal. And a stereo signal just simply means a left channel and a right channel are delivering sounds. And nowadays, there's a lot of very common, people get like Bluetooth speakers and it's just one speaker. Or there's Bose radio systems that have been out for a while where it's just one speaker and they actually combine the left and right channels. And those you want to avoid because they're not going to give you quite as much power. Now, one thing to remember is that the binaural beats created by Sacred Acoustics also include monaural beats. And monaural beats is like a drum beat, boom, 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 or isochronic, they might be called. But we combine those. And so it is the case that our recordings do have an effect over speakers, but better to have 2 speakers delivering the signals. And some people who have hearing loss, they can have good effects using bone conduction headphones. It's going to be different for every single person, but bone conduction headphones are marketed to athletes, runners who want to not have their ears fully covered. So say if they're running in traffic, out in the world, they want to still have an awareness of cars and other sounds that are helpful for them to hear. But for people with hearing loss, the sound actually goes into the bones. They rest behind your ears and they completely bypass the inner ear's cochlea, which is how a normal hearing range person would hear. And so there's many, many ways to get those sounds into your system. Other people use sound tables or sound chairs. I know I've been on massage tables where they'll put sound in them. So those can be kind of interesting to feel the vibrations throughout your whole body. And another type of headphone that can be quite useful, especially if you're lying down, say you're listening to sleep, are sleep phones. That's actually a brand name of headphones that are put inside of a fleece band that goes around your head. And so you don't have anything inside your ears or around your ears. It's actually feels very gentle. And you can position the earbuds inside the fleece band right over where you can hear best. So there's lots of different ways to listen. It's important to point out too that we do recommend lying down. And so that's why comfortable headphones can be useful. Most meditative traditions will suggest that you sit up in a chair or sit on a cushion or something. And that is one of the reasons is that so that you don't fall asleep. And so it can be very useful for, at first, if you are finding yourself falling asleep easily, to sit up and don't lie down. But lying down gives you the best opportunity for full body relaxation while your mind stays alert and aware to, create different things in your experience.
I actually like the idea of falling asleep because I'm someone who takes a long time to fall asleep in the evening. So that's definitely a plus for me.
Yeah, that's what I mean. So many of us are different, and many people, that's why they listen, is that it helps them fall asleep, and that's all they want to have. But what they tell me is even if they're getting better sleep, it's improving their lives because they don't have the symptoms of sleep deprivation. Some people talk about they have a richer dream life. They're able to remember dreams when they never have before, Or some people who have a good dream life already, they'll start to have lucid dreams. That's where you realize while you're dreaming that you're having a dream. And that's where you can learn to manage your unfolding dream experience as well in all kinds of interesting ways. So lots of different benefits that sometimes surprise people, especially when they listen for sleep and find these other kinds of effects are happening. So it really depends on the individual. We all have different brainwave states. I found it really interesting when I learned that brain waves can actually be used to identify people, like fingerprints. So we all have a unique brainwave signature. I don't know exactly what it's called, but when you do an EEG, we're all going to be just a little bit different. So when they talk about normal ranges, there is no normal in this setting, because any experience you have is completely valid and real for you, depending on who you are in that moment when it takes place.
When I looked at your library, there were a lot to choose from, and I really didn't know where to start. I did choose one, but I want to break it down a little bit. So if somebody is new to meditation, is there a suggestion that you have in terms of one of the, do you call them programs to start with, or what would you call them?
You can call them titles, programs,
Titles, yeah.
products. Yeah. Tracks.
So what would a newbie start with?
Well, nowadays we recommend the Whole Mind Bundle. This is a collection of recordings in all three of the brainwave states: delta, theta, and alpha. And there's 20-minute versions for for those people who want to establish a practice. And there's both guided and unguided 20-minute versions. And then it also includes 60-minute versions of the same recording so that you can play them for any length of time. So the Delta track, for example, could be played all night if you wish for falling asleep, or you might just listen to it for an hour, let it, shut off on its own, and you find yourself sleeping. The Theta recording can be used while you're, doing creative activities such as painting or anything that's creative. I mean, probably even mechanics might benefit from hearing the sound. The theta waves are not only known for meditation, but also creativity. And so very useful. And then some people listen to the alpha recording when they're studying, when they want to have that extra focus. But I know also some people listen to the theta recording when they want to study. And so it really just, that Whole Mind Bundle gives a beginner, or even someone who's new to binaural beats but already knows meditation, it gives you a chance to see, how do I respond to these different brainwave states? And that same exact set of recordings, it's worth stating that they were used in a pilot study by a psychiatrist in New York City, and she prescribed these same exact recordings to her patients, and they were given the basic listening protocols, the same listening protocols that come with this bundle. There's a PDF guide or a printed guide if you purchase CDs. But they found that after 2 weeks of listening, these patients saw a 26% reduction in anxiety, whereas her psychiatric patients who did not listen, who just had their regular therapy, they saw a 7% reduction in anxiety over the same time. So quite a remarkable difference. She was quite amazed. And so she continues to prescribe them when patients are willing to try. But not only did anxiety reduce, but people were able to, there was a medical student who found herself sleeping better, studying better, getting better scores on her very challenging exams, less anxiety about all of it. So, someone else, I think it was a man, he had been in a toxic relationship for years, and Dr. Yusuf had been following him. And after he started listening to these recordings, somehow he was able to resolve this toxic relationship. We're not really sure how that connection happened. And that's the amazing thing, is that you don't have to know the exact how. I really just encourage people to try it. And that study was actually published in February of 2020 in a peer-reviewed medical journal. And that, if you recall, was right when the pandemic began, right when kind of the panic went around the world that, oh my gosh, we have to stay home, this unknown disease, very anxiety producing. And so I made those recordings. Once we had that study published, I made them available at a drastically reduced price and also a free option for any of your listeners where financial difficulties might be a barrier. There is no barrier. As long as you have a device to listen on, you can get a hold of these recordings still. I've kept them, and I don't plan to take away that free option because it's been so useful for so many people. Many of us in financial difficulties have more anxiety than the rest of the world. And so even someone who takes the time to reduce their anxiety like that is helping themselves, certainly, but it's also helping all the people around them. When you're around someone who's calm and not anxious, that's helpful to all of us. And so that's why it's still available for anyone, especially beginners who want to give this a try.
I love that you do that for people and help. And then also just everyone can try one because you do have a free one that's just for everybody.
Yeah, there's a 20-minute Om recording. Just put in your email. You don't have to tell us anything else. We'll send you that recording. And some people, that's all they listen to. That turns out to be their favorite sometimes, even if they buy other recordings, and they love that it's 20 minutes because that gives them their 20-minute practice. But some people will go on and buy the longer version because they want to dive in to a deeper state. But the Om recording, some people will find there's again a very wide reaction to that recording. People will find sometimes that, oh, this is so familiar. I feel like, I'm home. That word Om in the word home is so interesting. They feel this very strong sense of belonging. And then others, maybe who have been influenced by religious beliefs and so on, they find the Om to be very spooky or scary. And so that's why we have plenty of different types of recordings, because everyone is going to have a slightly different sensitivity. And so it's important to us that people realize that not every recording is going to be responded to the same by every listener.
So you've already mentioned the theta, the alpha, the bundle that you can get. But is there another one that you would suggest for someone who just simply wants to get a good night's sleep?
Well, that would be the whole Delta recording. That's why that collection is so useful. But we do have one called Sacred Sleep. We have another one called Sacred Siesta. That's so if you want to take a nap in the afternoon, there's 3 different lengths. So and at the end, there's what we call wake up tones, so that you're not just going to stay in that sleepy state. But so Sacred Sleep, Sacred Siesta. Another one we have is called Sacred Lullaby. That was created for babies. And so it has a mother singing on it, but older people like it too, especially if you're fond of singing, of this beautiful singing voice. Some people will find that very conducive for sleep and others will not. I happen to be someone who has had bouts with insomnia, and so I know how sensitive I can be about certain sounds. But Divine Love is another one that's very useful for people who are trying to get a good night's sleep. That one is fully guided through a yoga nidra exercise, and that's a form of yoga that's actually called divine sleep. And so it helps get you into a relaxed state, whether you hear the words going on or not. Some people use that one to get better sleep. So lots of different options.
What about somebody who wants something for healing?
Well, we do have one called Healing Center. It's an involved guided tour through a waterfall, and you put on a robe and you go into a cave and there's all these crystals and you go through a crystal and then you go to this etheric healing center where you lie in the middle, and not giving it all away, but it's a rather involved kind of journey. And some people respond very well to those types of visualizations. But healing in general, you can really use any of the recordings as long as your intention is, I feel whole and healthy. I feel whole and healthy. As you're listening, then it is going to have some type of effectiveness.
Do you have suggestions like that on your website? I am whole and healthy, or various things that people could go to set intentions?
Well, we have a series of what I call training videos, and one of them is called Setting an Intention. So it explains all of that. We do make suggestions here and there for people who are not sure where to start. And but it really is so unique to each individual. I stay away from too much guidance, because we want to leave an opening for people to bring their own in there. But even that whole mind bundle, those 20-minute versions, they include affirmations like, I am part of the universe. I can't remember exactly, but yes, all of the recordings that contain guidance will have some type of affirmation or intention included. But any recording that has guidance, we also have a version you get by default that has no words at all, because some of us really need that guidance, especially beginners. I know I did. I needed someone saying something to me, but I found if they talked for too long, that they kind of got in the way. And so our guidance is minimal compared to some. And again, those who don't prefer to have the guidance, you have the option of the version with no words at all, always. And then some of our recordings, there is no guidance. There's one called Water, and that's nothing but water sounds and binaural beats and other soothing sound effects with no words at all. So it really just depends on our motivation for creating one, whether there's guidance or not.
I really like the guidance, but I also like the option of being able to turn it off. And I believe that you do a lot of these recordings. Is that correct?
I have guided some of them, yes.
Because people hear you now, you have this strong, beautiful voice, but you have such a calm voice on the recordings that I've heard. So it really is very comforting, I think, for people to listen to that.
Yeah, well, I get on a completely different voice when I'm recording a meditation. So, got to speak slower, calmer, quieter. Yeah, very different than your speaking voice for sure.
Yes, your
Thank you.
pacing, you're welcome, and your pacing is great. Now,
Thank
there
you.
are some people that are going to say, okay, I want to use this to get really deep into meditation or have an out of body experience or something like that. What would you suggest that they listen to?
Well, there's a few that the more advanced, I call them enthusiasts, people who have done this a lot, listen to all the binaural beats out there, or have a lot of experience. And for that, I would guide people. There's several, but one would be Light Body. And that one is reported to have helped people with out of body experiences. Although that wasn't our original intention for creating it, it does include visualizations of your body's energy moving in and out of the body, like out the top of the head to infinity, and then out the bottom of the feet to infinity, and then back through, and then spinning all around your body. And those visualizations are a part of what helps people have out of body experiences. And so that one actually includes combinations of delta, theta, alpha, and gamma. Those are the frequencies that are above 30 hertz, above the beta state. And that has been known to exist in very practiced meditators, like Tibetan monks naturally go into this gamma state. Some mediums have been measured to have gamma when they're making contact with deceased loved ones. Not every medium, but occasionally we'll see that. And so gamma is also associated with extreme athletic performance. So someone like a runner's high, someone who is extremely athletic, knows that when they get to a certain point that they just feel like this expansive connection. That's the gamma state as well. Those are harder to deliver using binaural beats. That's why they're only on Light Body, and we anchor them with delta, theta, and alpha, different combinations, because gamma alone, people either love it or hate it. And so we wanted to make one that was a little more anchored. So there was some gamma in it, but not only gamma. That especially us who are the alpha testers, we didn't like gamma alone. And so I know that some of those recordings are out there and people can just try them and see what they think. But Light Body is quite advanced, I think, not necessarily the best place for a true beginner to begin, although there is no barrier and some people do begin there and have good success. So all of my advice is not meant to be absolute. Another good one for experienced people is primordial mind is excellent.
I was just going to ask you about that. And the reason is that reminds me of what EBEN was talking about in a recent episode, just about his muddy jello experience. But that's not exactly the same thing that this is.
No, what primordial means is like the kind of substance that exists before all other, right? So it's just the primordial, the original consciousness is what he means. He doesn't mean he encountered primordial consciousness in the core as well,
Interesting.
where he describes encountering that divine being that he called Om. He couldn't bring himself to call it God because he says that word was too small to describe it. And what he heard in that realm was this Om sound that he calls the expression of all infinity and eternity. That's primordial consciousness. So the Om recording is definitely close to that primordial consciousness, and primordial mind is as well. It's quite a little journey from a kind of letting go of all of your ego and who you think you are, and just really entering into that kind of original primordial consciousness from whence we all came. And so that's what primordial mind is all about. But Eben, he helps us with all of these recordings because he listens to them pretty much every day. And he finds them to be quite useful. He's very familiar with our library of recordings. And because he's helped to develop all of them, he helps listen and helps us tweak. In fact, Foundation Series, that is the first set of recordings we created, still available. We've actually updated it since the original release in 2012. I think it was 2016. We updated it with some new techniques we had developed. But Foundation Series is kind of based on his experience. So we start with the Om frequencies just to get people settled, but then it goes into what we call Earth. That's the earthworm eye view you were just referring to, where things were like muddy jello, the most primitive kind of consciousness that he could imagine. But then we go to the blue track, and that's what he called the Gateway Valley is the blue track. And then the portal track, that's the core realm. And so when we created those recordings, we were trying to sort of mimic his near-death experience journey, but we didn't market it that way because I didn't want people to think that they would have the same experience Eben had, and these are the sounds he heard on his journey. I felt that would be quite misleading. And so, but we did develop it for that purpose. So some people are curious about that, but everyone will have a different experience when you go into start listening to these recordings. That used to be what we recommended for beginners because that was the only set of recordings we have. But I feel as though they're more for an intermediate listener. Although if someone is really, resonating with the Om recording, that may be a better pathway. So many, many options.
You alluded to this a little bit earlier, but what about listening to these when you're doing something else, such as hiking? Are there some that are better to listen to than others?
Well, it's interesting. Yeah, we they weren't designed for walking, moving around, but there are people who use them for that. The one activity I would say do not do while you're listening is driving, because you can get into an altered state and not really realize, and then forget to hit the brake when there's a red light or something like that. So but for hiking, for walking, painting, like I said, writing, reading, some people are just doing housework, they might listen to these recordings and they find them to be very relaxing and help them stay in that zone. And it's really going to take a little trial and error for the listener to determine if that's going to be helpful to them. And one thing is if you want to have the experience of lying down, getting into that hypnagogic space to induce out-of-body experience or lucid dreaming and so on, then you probably don't want to train yourself to listen while you're walking around. So you just want to play it by ear, how you want to approach it. based on your personal goals. I do know that one person listened to Light Body at a very low volume all throughout his day while he went about his various activities, not driving, but he found that it reduced the pain of his neuropathy. And so he wasn't like getting focused and into the zone, but just somehow those background sounds helped to do that for him. Another person who listened doing other activities, she was a blind woman, I think in the Netherlands, and she had a lot of anxiety about walking around in the world. And that's because she would run into things occasionally. Even if she was with someone or was using her cane, she might run into a sign that her cane didn't feel, or a tree branch or something. And so it created lots of anxiety. So she would walk on a treadmill listening to one of our recordings. I believe it was low band pi trance. That was also created for a movement type of activity like qigong sorts of things. But she would listen to that while she was walking on the treadmill, imagine herself walking out in the world. And then when she would feel the anxiety come up, she would remind herself, like, when your racing thoughts are going on, oh, this is my opportunity to return my focus. So she would feel that anxiety and then go, oh, no, I'm going to be calm. I'm going to stay calm. And before too long, she was able to walk around out in the world with much, much less anxiety. And that's a real practical, wonderful application that this person invented, really, that I never would have thought to really suggest to someone. And so really creativity and innovation on how you listen is highly encouraged, because we all are going to have situations that, not all of us can imagine. And so it can be a beautiful way to kind of get in touch. Pregnancy is another time you might want to listen. We created a recording called Cosmic Womb, and that was for actually accompanying someone in labor and delivery to kind of keep them calm. And our audio engineer developed it for his wife when she was going through, she had 3 natural childbirths, listening to that recording. And it was funny because it turns out that it not only calmed the mother, but it also calmed the mother-in-law, who was very anxious in these situations. And so when we played it for my daughter's labor in a hospital, the nurses would come in. They're always used to hearing different types of music, but they would hear that and go, oh my gosh, what is this? That is different. And people should know that Cosmic Womb is much more easily played over a 1-speaker system. And that's because of how we designed it. It's actually the only recording that works pretty well, even just listening to over an iPhone speaker without headphones. So you can still get effects from that one, especially over a 1-speaker system. It makes it very convenient for calming your child. My daughter, she listened to it during her pregnancy. That's why I brought it up. And that's, whatever anxiety she was having, she would just, remind herself, no, all is well. Everything's going to be fine. And you can also maybe start to feel a connection to your baby's soul that's, hanging around, waiting to get inside of its body. Some people will do that. And so it can be very interesting. But once my grandson was born, he knew the sound. He recognized the sound. And so that's another fun thing that can happen when you listen to different music during pregnancy.
For people who want to hear more or they want to get some of these recordings, what's the best way to do that?
Well, sacredacoustics.com is where you'll find that free download. Look for a link to free download. We'll send you that Om recording. Look for a Whole Mind Bundle and the training series. There's also a contact form. And so if you have any questions at all, you can just put it right in there and they all come to me. So I'm able to answer questions directly, no matter what. It can be helpful to have a little information about what people are looking for. And, if you're asking for advice, it's helpful to know a little bit about where, a little bit about your story, what you've already done and, how you've responded and such. But I'm happy to assist people in that way.
And what about your book that you wrote with EBEN?
Living in a Mindful Universe. Yes, you can learn more about that on ebenalexander.com. We keep that on his website because he's the primary author. And we have a website together that we created called innersanctumcenter.com. And that's where you can find some free resources and also It's a membership platform where people have an opportunity to interact with us on a monthly basis. And so all of those resources are available. Inner Sanctum Center membership also includes some sacred acoustics sample recordings. So another opportunity to try those.
So as we end, do you have some encouragement or advice for someone who says, yes, I want to do this?
Well, my encouragement there is to accept my gratitude for taking the time to do this, because if you've listened to Eben Alexander's episode, you've heard about that we're all connected through one consciousness. I like to say we're all connected not through one mind, but we're connected through one heart, that our hearts are actually interacting. And that's our experience of connection, is through the heart. And so anyone who takes the time to do this, please accept my gratitude for not only helping yourself, but helping all of us. Because each of us, as we take the time to do this, we're contributing to that whole that we're all a part of. And really, I imagine a world where everyone knows how to go within, feel their feelings, resolve and let go of any emotional traumas, and really bring their best self forward to the world, because our hearts are influencing the people around us, whether we realize it or not. And so taking the time to do that is so, so helpful. And you're not only helping yourself, you're helping others around you. So that would be my encouragement.
And that is a great message. Karen, thank you so very much for being with me over this episode and the last one. It's really been wonderful talking to you.
Well, thank you, Heather. And thanks for bringing these interesting stories to your listeners and having an open mind to really help people find their way through all of this. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you. And thank you also to all of you that are listening right now. If you enjoyed this conversation, please give it a like. Karen and I would also love to hear your comments, so go ahead and make some of those. Share it with a friend. And if you haven't subscribed yet, please do that. Thank you, everybody, for being here. Thank you, Karen.
Thanks for joining me on Beyond with Heather Tesch. Please add comments and questions you'd like future guests to answer. Also, if you liked what you heard, please hit the thumbs up button and subscribe. That'll help keep this podcast going. You can also go to Beyond with Heather Tesch to look for more episodes.